You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
And, like I said many times, these elected officials or these non-government organizations, they can't cross the line either. I mean, we got people like, Hakeem Jeffries saying he's going to dox ICE employees, ICE agents out there with masks on. They're wearing masks to protect themselves and their families because they've been doxxed, their families been doxxed, their life's been threatened, their families have been threatened. I know myself, I had over 1,000 protesters at my house. I expect that as the borders are, but these men and women are putting their lives on line every day. They arrested a lot of bad people yesterday and today. They arrested child sex offenders. They arrested people convicted of robbery. They arrested public safety, not only significant public safety threats, but national security threats. They arrested gang members. We're making Los Angeles safer. And Mayor Bass ought to be thanking us for making her city safer. And the term migrant, as Joe Concha rightfully said earlier, they're illegal aliens. There are illegal aliens in this country, and we welcome. We're the most giving country in the world. But these are illegal aliens who committed a crime by crossing this border illegally, then yet committed another crime. Again, yesterday's about a criminal investigation into money laundering, tax evasion, and some of the funds going to cartels in Mexico and Colombia that fund their operations of sending narcotics to this country, killing American people. This is about enforcing the law, and again, we're not going to apologize for doing it. We're stepping up. She says they're going to mobilize. Well, guess what? We're already ahead of the game. We're already mobilizing. We're going to bring National Guard in tonight. We're going to continue doing our job. We're going to push back on these people, and we're going to force the law.
Tom, it's Lydia.
Welcome back to More War Monday. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, war's within our borders, folks. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, as you just heard, is letting rioters illegally block freeways in Los Angeles. Democrat politicians continue to wrongly allow and even encourage the massive violence in California. President Trump has correctly federalized the California National Guard because local and federal law enforcement units are, and I'll quote them here, overwhelmed by the numbers of violent rioters who are now using deadly weapons to attack officers. That's from the LA police chief just this morning. Unfortunately, the war within our borders isn't just elected officials rebelling in sanctuary states like California, but they carry their resistance activities into the Senate confirmation process and are obstructing many appointees who have fought for our country and been badly wounded in some cases and are desperately needed to lead President Trump's team to do things like reestablish America's strength, secure those borders completely, and take care of our veterans. Well, my guest today is Mark Lucas. He's the founder of a group that I just became aware of not long ago, Veteran Action. It is an activist group advocating for America First policies that strengthen national security and provide unwavering support for our veterans. Lucas served as an infantry officer in the Iowa Army National Guard and is a graduate of the U.S. Army Ranger School, which means he didn't eat a lot there, but worked hard. He was awarded the Combat Infantry Badge and Bronze Star Medal in Afghanistan during the deadliest year of Operation Enduring Freedom. That's saying something about his loyal service to this country. Mark's built some of the largest and most effective grassroots efforts in the conservative movement. He served as the executive vice president of the Article 3 Project, one of my favorites, with Mike Davis. He conducted a media blitz defending Pete Hegseth and the rest of President Trump's cabinet. This effort recruited over 60,000 volunteers who contacted their lawmakers 250,000 plus times. Mark, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the Rob Maness Show, sir.
Well, thank you, sir, for having me on.
Yeah, man, I appreciate what you're doing and what you did with the Article Tree Project too. And I think you continue to serve on their board and all the other things that you've done for our country. I just really, really want you to know that we're grateful for folks like you and your colleagues. As a matter of fact, I push your activism links every time I see them because I'm aligned with you guys in everything that I've seen. What do you think about this? You have three major areas in the Veterans Action Group, and what is it? Defense, veterans, and grassroots are your three main mission areas. So, in your defense mission area, uh, like me, you guys have stepped up and said it's part of defense to secure our borders and stop this illegal alien invasion of the country. What do you think about what's going on out there right now? I mean, Tom Homan, I love that man. But he needs more help, I think.
Yeah, so seeing those Los Angeles riots really brings home this point that we have to secure our border. And many of us that served overseas, we are just aghast of what's going on in a great city like Los Angeles. We have to defend our borders, and I believe that our border is not a political issue. Securing our border is not an immigration issue, is a matter of our national security. I tell people I served as an infantry private, but also as an infantry platoon leader over in Afghanistan. If you ask an 18-year-old infantry soldier what's the top priority once you leave the wire, they will tell you it's to maintain 360-degree security. We have not maintained operational security for our borders, and now we're paying that price. In Los Angeles, we have these people that are activists. They are aligned with what we've seen that happen with that Antifa in like Portland and Seattle and Minneapolis. They're conducting, I say, full-scale operations to undermine the security of our country. And that's why Veteran Action, I was very happy to come out forcefully behind Tom Homan and President Trump when they talked about activating the National Guard, because I believe that we need to have a swift and brutal response to this act of domestic terrorism that we're seeing against our law enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think? I'm curious as to your generation's reaction when you see politicians like Mayor Bass or Governor Newsom openly rebelling against the president and trying to gaslight really the public by saying things like, well, it's President Trump's actions that are the root cause of this, when we all know that he was overwhelmingly elected on this very issue to, to deport massive numbers of these millions of illegals, especially the what 13 million that came in during the Biden administration.
I don't think that Governor Newsom or Mayor Bass understands this new media environment. They may have been able to get away with this in the 60s or the 70s, when we saw some of that massive civil unrest. But here in 2025, with X and True Social and Rumble and these other platforms, people can see what's actually happening. So I think there's not only do they not understand the political environment, because you're right, President Trump, a part of his massive coalition that delivered him victory the first time in 2016 was built on this immigration issue. So I think they're going to look at how this situation develops. Democrats pull everything. I think they're going to see that they're going to be underwater on this issue. I think that's point number one. Point number two, they are, in my opinion, obstructing federal law. And our border czar, Tom Homan, he has shown the willingness to go after these elected officials who obstruct and who violate federal law. So we're going to watch this very closely, but we have the support of President Trump, Tom Homan, our law enforcement officials, and we need to hold these bad actors like Governor Newsom accountable. This is the first wave. This is
Mhm.
reminding me of the summer of love. So we have to send in an overwhelming and dominant force on the ground to send a message to everybody across the country that what happened in Minneapolis and Portland is not going to happen again.
Yeah, we saw then those of us that are more than just casual observers of this. I mean, you understand how operations work and the logistics required behind it, the intelligence work that has to go into something like this, the amount of resources that have to flow to your forces in order for them to have the tools they need, the communications capabilities they need, and the tactics and training and intelligence they need in order to be successful. We saw that used against us in the Summer of Love, and we are seeing again highly organized, highly resourced, and highly trained activists. I mean, if you look at some of these videos, you see communist flags, the old Soviet communist flag. You see Palestinian keffiyehs, which reminds me of the Islamist communist axis, the red-green axis that we've known about that have been trying to subvert societies around the world in order to succeed in their goals. You see all those in the video, and you see these crowds doing specific tactics like dragging park benches across roads, throwing Molotov cocktails at abandoned police cars where they blocked freeways, actually attacking police officers now, from what I understand the chief said this morning. We've got to go beyond just arresting these people on the street, right?
We're fighting an insurgency. And this reminds me of the counterinsurgency operations that we conducted in Afghanistan. I deployed in 2010 during the surge under General Petraeus, the author of the counterinsurgency manual for the United States military. And we've seen what Antifa and these leftist organizations have done across this country for the past decade, if not longer. And this is an insurgency that is planning to undermine the United States of America, our sovereignty. And you can see, like you mentioned about dragging park benches, they are employing the same tactics, techniques, and procedures that we have seen from the Antifa ground forces in places like Seattle and Portland, where they really refined their tactics and they deployed them nationwide during the Summer of Love. And we also had Joe Biden the last 4 years that provided them complete freedom of maneuver. The FBI, the military, or intelligence agencies, they weren't allowed to look into these organizations. However, they were directed to look at good traditional Catholics like myself in Virginia in the traditional Latin Mass community, but they have not been able to really do the work that's necessary. Not only do we have to respond tactically to Los Angeles, but just like in counterinsurgency, we have to look at the organizers. We have to look at the funding channels. We know who they are. We know the NGOs. We know the funders. The House Judiciary Committee, law enforcement, the intelligence agencies, they have to take the gloves off. And we have to finally go to work to completely dismantle this criminal enterprise.
Yeah, as we look at the law enforcement piece of this, beyond just the tactical level, Mark, you just mentioned that the DOJ and the House Judiciary Committee, they've all got to take the gloves off here. What should people be demanding that see this and go, wait a minute, I voted for President Trump to do these mass deportations and send these people home because they're damaging our country. And you have governors and mayors and until early this morning, the police chief of Los Angeles out here saying, "Oh, it's peaceful. This is all Donald Trump's fault." And they know that it's not just those tactical people on the ground that are doing this. They know the name of George Soros. They are familiar with the USAID scandal and the way funding has been flowed from Congress through agencies to NGOs to use taxpayer dollars to do things really that most Americans don't support. I mean, I think this is one of them. I suspect. We got to take a break here in a second, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about how can we help them know that they need to do this work for us as citizens and make those demands so that the work actually gets done instead of just more committee hearings or strongly worded letters and those kind of things. So, folks, we'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show. It's unfortunately More War Monday, and we're talking about our internal wars, both politically and what looks like a new kinetic part of one out in Los Angeles with these leftist activists that really are insurgents, what they are. We'll be right back with Mark Lucas.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archived vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
Happened, and then the National Guard was federalized. So they're working for the U.S. Army, not for the California State National Guard.
Do we need them?
Do we need them? Well, looking at it tonight, this thing has gotten out of control. Before I could answer that, I'd have to know more about what their capabilities are, what their role is intended to be able to make that determination. But we have great cops in Southern California here that work together all the time. So we have tremendous capability here. To say that we would go to that right away, I'd say we're not. We wouldn't have been there yet. Looking at the violence tonight, I think we got to make a reassessment.
Laurel, how has your department interacted with the National Guard, if at all, since they've been here?
I'd say very little, other than we had a conference call this afternoon. There aren't a whole lot of soldiers in place at this time. They're still incoming.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're talking about the war within our own borders with founder of Veterans Action, Mark Lucas, who's a combat experienced infantry officer, served in the Iowa National Guard and in Afghanistan at the height of the most fierce fighting in Operation Enduring Freedom. And Mark, the police chief there, Mr. McDonald, that was from late last night, our time, probably, I think, 8 p.m. Pacific, his time, where he's finally admitting that, hey, this is not peaceful. We are really overwhelmed. Instead of the initial show was up, we put out a statement. It's entirely peaceful in Los Angeles, et cetera, because facts tend to overwhelm propaganda at some point. Thank goodness. Unfortunately, people get hurt and potentially die in those types of situations. As you know, we've both experienced that type of thing before in our travels around the world and the different conflicts that we've served in. But this time, we see potentially more involvement than just the Marxist Antifa side that was involved heavily in the BLM riots. Isn't the potential even higher for the addition of narco-terrorists from terrorism capabilities from the cartels in this situation because of its physical proximity geographically to the border, but also because they have skin in this game now, don't they?
Absolutely. It's not only just the narcos, it's also going to be China, Russia, Iran, anybody who wants to undermine the stability of the United States will jump onto this effort. And going back to your earlier question before the break, like what can we do to really change the politics of this for these politicians like Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass in Los Angeles? Well, number one, it took President Trump to take operational control of the California National Guard, which he did. That's the first step. But the second and most long-term solution is to defund them. If you want this to stop, you take away the money from California, you take away the money from Los Angeles, and President Trump and his team can look at ways to defund California until Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass does their job. President Trump does not want to have to deal with this. He's got China, he's got Russia and Ukraine, he's got tariffs. All we expect is for local leaders to prioritize their citizens, but they haven't done that. So now we're going to jump in and we're going to do that. But President Trump also understands the long-term implications, that this is going to set a precedent. And this summer could turn into a very brutal and deadly summer if we don't take action right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're already hearing rumors that Antifa is organizing for later today direct action up in San Francisco. And you mentioned China. I'm glad you brought that up. In addition to the cartels in California, especially, China has tens of thousands of people that are military age, most of them males, that are on the ground inside the United States. Some estimates put the border crossings under the Biden administration of Chinese military age males upwards of 100,000 people. We know that they've always had a really large and resourceful presence throughout California, but especially in the San Francisco area. And we know that we've caught their operatives taking videos of Vandenberg Air Force Base, where we launch our intercontinental ballistic missile systems for testing and those kind of things. And we've caught them videotaping our ports too, where our U.S. Navy vessels are anchored and work out of. What do you think needs to happen on the direct Defense Department side from that perspective as we do this mixture? Like you said, the president took operational control of the California National Guard, which is well within the Insurrection Act and the constitutional powers of the U.S. president. But as we start to see this mixture of foreign actors like this that are on the intelligence and military side of that adversary, specifically the Chinese communist, what should the Defense Department's actions look like outside of the California National Guard down in Los Angeles?
We need to change our approach. We need to take the gloves off and treat this like an insurgency, that there are foreign actors on American soil who are undermining the security of our citizens. So therefore, forget political optics. We have seen that the masks have come off from the left, from people like Hakeem Jeffries and Governor Newsom. These people are willing to aid and abet these domestic terrorists who are being financed and sometimes trained by foreign actors. So it's time to take the gloves off, treat this like a counterinsurgency, and bring every force that we can to bear, whether that's military force, the intelligence agencies. We have to rip off this Band-Aid. We have allowed this to happen for years. And everybody in Washington knows the actors that are behind it. They're just afraid to bring in the people like George Soros within his criminal enterprise, his NGO and nonprofit network. We've known what's going on at USAID for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's time for really our elected officials in Washington to keep up with the intensity of President Trump. What I've seen so far in Trump's now over 100 days in office, he has worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week. He has brought an energy that we haven't seen in the Oval Office for a long time, if ever. All I'm asking for is congressional Republicans to keep up with them. So as we're trying to take out these domestic terrorists in Los Angeles, as we're trying to confirm great nominees, as we're trying to pass the big, beautiful bill, all I ask for congressional Republicans is just try to keep up. That's all we need. President Trump has a historic mandate. He won every swing state. He won the popular vote. The American people support his agenda of securing the border. They support his agenda like no taxes on tips, his nominees. They'll support his judges that he puts forward coming in the future. So congressional Republicans, just try to keep up with President Trump.
Yeah, it's very well put, my friend. Very well put. One of the things that Secretary Hegseth did, I think, last night or yesterday morning, was publicly say he has put the U.S. Marine Corps at the base, Camp Pendleton. They're on high alert, preparing them to support. You know, when the National Guard was called out in 1992 and the riots there, they had a specific mission set that was successful. there was minimal loss of life, but there was some loss of life. But there was never a discussion about using active duty forces like the Marine Corps out of the Southern California active duty base. What would you say that their mission is likely to be if they end up having to be used in this operation?
Shock and awe. That's the Marine Corps. You know, when you say you're sending in the Marines, typically that's the President of the United States saying that on a international level, and people respond. There is fear that is evoked when one of our nation's leaders says we're sending in the Marines. And Pete Hegseth put everybody on notice that yes, the National Guard is coming in tonight, but the Marines are warming up in the bullpen. And I can tell you one thing about the National Guard. After 9/11, we became an operational force. So this is a different National Guard than people saw in the early 90s. After 9/11, we were put on so many different combat deployments. My unit was an infantry unit. We were actual battle space owners in Afghanistan and Regional Command East, one of the most kinetic parts of the country. So this National Guard is different, and they have a killer instinct. And I can tell you, we had these things called NGRF, which is the National Guard Reaction Force, and we would rotate different units to fulfill that mission on an annual basis. And I can tell you that these guys don't want to see the National Guard come in either. It's not like the 1990s or 1980s where they're just filling sandbags. These are war fighters. These are guys with true combat experience. And they are also from their home state of California. So they care about their community. They care about Los Angeles. They want to do what's right. And when they see these people destroying property, and when they see these people punching law enforcement officials like the LAPD, they're going to come in, they're going to be the cavalry, and President Trump and Pete Hegseth is going to restore order.
So once the order is restored, that's a good point, though. I'm glad you pointed that out. It is a totally different National Guard. I spent many hours flying close air support missions in RC East in support of the ground forces there. So I understand exactly what you're saying. So once peace is restored, what do you see? How will a counterinsurgency effort look moving forward here? Because I think this is something that's very different than what we have seen in the 20th and early 21st century in use of U.S. military forces. I fully support it, have long thought that we need to engage in this type of activity, especially with the cartels, but with this large mass of Chinese military age males now available as resources to the left here, I think it's got to be even more rigorous in that regard and go into a full blown counterinsurgency effort. What would that look like in Southern California?
Well, I know that the intelligence agencies know a lot of these Antifa operators. They personally have done the work of mapping out their networks and the key individuals and the funding sources. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit to reestablish control, and it starts with treating Antifa as what they are, a domestic terrorist organization, and conducting a counterinsurgency operation where we're rolling people up, we're throwing them in prison, we're looking at their networks, their funders, their supporters, their friends and family. We're looking at the nonprofits and the NGOs that are funding them. And there will be a systemic law enforcement and intelligence operation to completely dismantle this enterprise because they're not going away. They've been around for a long time. They're playing the long game, and they're going to wait out or attempt to wait out President Trump. And I could see that if there's this strong and forceful response and order is restored, that they're going to kind of hunker down and just play it safe and evaluate, just like our enemies in Afghanistan. They would test out their TTPs, and if they saw a hard target, which means a unit that responds with an overwhelming amount of force, they're going to wait to fight another day, or they're going to move north or south of that position and fight a weaker unit. So we have to understand that even though President Trump will most likely restore order in California quickly, this counterinsurgency operation cannot stop. We have to see it to the end, and we've got to completely destroy Antifa.
Yeah, and when you look at Green Beret type operations, foreign internal defense is what we used to call it. I've heard some folks from that background call this domestic internal defense operations. need to start taking place too, in conjunction with this counterinsurgency, so that our communities can protect themselves. So we got to take another break, Mark. When we come back, though, I want to move this to the Washington D.C. swamp discussion and the political. We'll see a little clip that you actually posted about my friend Matt Lohmeyer, and talk about the appointees and what's going on in D.C. with what I see as some obstructionism from Republicans against our nominees. We'll be right back with Mark Lucas of Veterans Action.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at WVWFoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at WVWFoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at WVWFoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
President Trump has nominated fighter pilot and Space Force Commander Matt Lohmeyer as Undersecretary of the Air Force. He finished top of his class at 4 different Air Force schools and holds 2 masters. Fired by Biden for challenging DEI, Trump is now putting him back where he belongs.
Not going to do better than that.
Tell your senators. Confirm Matt Lohmeyer.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday. We're talking about the war inside the borders this time. And my guest today is the founder of Veterans Action, Mark Lucas, who's also a combat experienced infantry officer in the Iowa National Guard and fought in Operation Enduring Freedom, and has a full understanding of counterinsurgency operations and those kind of things, but also has a good understanding of the political operations that are going on right now. And that video was from his group, because we're trying to get Matt Lohmeyer's confirmation vote to occur, and it's being slow rolled, if not absolutely obstructed right now. And if you Mark, if you go back to that little clip where the president's on stage with Matt, there's a guy off to the left as you're looking at the video, and that's a guy named Rob Maness that was sitting on that stage with Matt when he was talking to the president. And afterwards, I got to speak to the president. I said, "Sir, he doesn't need to be a task force guy. He needs to be your Secretary of the Air Force." So we got really close, and I think he's going to be fantastic at that. But we got to get him out of the confirmation process so he can go to work.
You're absolutely right. And Matt Lohmeyer is an incredible nominee to be our next Undersecretary of the Air Force. You saw that video where President Trump promised him a job in his administration, because Matt was courageous enough to stand up to the just insanity of DEI and this Marxist infiltration in the Pentagon. But he's more than just that. He was an experienced fighter pilot who flew the F-15 aircraft in Okinawa, so he's got Pacific theater experience. He speaks Mandarin. He was also a part of a military exchange program with the Chinese military, which no longer exists. He was a Space Force commander. He's a graduate of the Air Force Academy. He's got 2 different master's degrees in military studies from the most elite school in the Defense Department. So he's got these academic credentials, this leadership that he's demonstrated, but also the courage under fire where he lost his command for doing what was right in the face of DEI. So we're just asking the United States Senate to work 5 days a week to confirm President Trump's nominees. It's not that hard. We in the real world in America, we work 5 days a week, and they've just maintained this lazy Senate schedule where they'll show up on Monday night and leave by noon on Thursday. I just had Rachel Bovard on the Veteran Action Update Brief. She worked inside the United States Senate. She knows all about their scheduling, and her and I are putting this pressure on the majority leader, Thune, to say, hey, let's work 5 days a week. Let's expedite the confirmation of President Trump's nominees. They did a great job on his cabinet. They're able to successfully confirm every single one of Trump's cabinet picks. And I helped with Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel and RFK Jr., many of those. But now we have to get people like Matt Lohmeyer in as Air Force Undersecretary and Sam Brown as the Undersecretary of the VA for Memorial Services. There's a lot of good people that we need to get confirmed and staff up.
Now, I use the word obstructionism. What did Rachel say? Is it really just the machinery, though, Mark, or is there some political nefarious purpose behind slow rolling these? Because you have a lot of folks out there. I talk to many of them every day that want to go to work in this administration. They've submitted their names. They're very loyal to the policies. They supported Pete, for instance, and those kind of things. And as outsiders looking at the process, they see something besides just the slow machinery of the political bureaucracy, and that something else is going on here. Because the secretary levels are filled now. I think we've got them all in. But even like you said, Matt's the Undersecretary of the Air Force. Even at that level and below, if we don't get folks in, 2 or 3 levels below that very quickly, the whole part of the machinery that's establishing peace through strength that's on its way right now will start to slowly come apart because of the resistors that we know are in the bureaucracy. What do you say to folks like that?
I don't believe that Leader Thune and Republicans in the Senate are obstructing. I think they're just taking their foot off the gas a little bit. And with politicians, we just have to keep the grassroots pressure on, or they're going to go back to their old habits. And we cannot go back to the status quo, lazy Senate schedule. We as grassroots voters all across America heard from President Trump and all these politicians that this was the most consequential election of our lifetime, that we had so much work to do to be able to fix the problems that President Joe Biden created for our country. And so we just expect them to go back and match the intensity of President Trump. And that's why Veteran Action, we're putting this pressure on, this grassroots pressure. We just started our organization 2 months ago. We've already recruited 1,000 volunteers who have contacted the lawmakers over 4,000 times. And we're just sending a very strong message that you need to confirm Matt Lohmeyer and Sam Brown. You need to work 5 days a week. We live in one of the most volatile times in modern world history, and we have to have our elected officials go to work and fix these problems, because before you know it, the midterms will be here, and I wouldn't count on Republicans holding the House. So we have a few short years to implement President Trump's agenda, which the American people supported overwhelmingly.
Yeah, absolutely. You haven't mentioned him. I'm glad you brought up Sam Brown. I mean, he's in Veterans Affairs and on the memorial side, and I think it's going to be fantastic there. I've met him too, and who's the other gentleman? Hung Cao, who was a Senate candidate in Virginia, I think has been nominated. Was it Undersecretary of the Navy? Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And with Sam Brown, he is just such an incredible nominee. He was wounded in a roadside bomb in Afghanistan where over 30% of his body was burned. He had to undergo 30 surgeries at least to recover from that. He received a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star. He's an Airborne Ranger qualified infantry officer. He was a West Point graduate. I mean, he is the creme de la creme. And he was a U.S. Senate candidate in Nevada. People out west love him. But you wouldn't believe this. Senator Gallego, a veteran, and Blumenthal, they both obstructed to the unanimous consent for him. So they're trying to obstruct his nomination, which is just unbelievable, because you just look at Sam and everything that he's done for this country. Nobody's going to serve veterans better than Captain Sam Brown.
Yeah, I mean, look, his wife and family understand the issues. They're fully supportive of him. What is the problem with Gallego? and those guys? Is it because he ran for U.S. Senate in Nevada?
Well, they had to quickly walk back why they didn't support him for unanimous consent. And they said, well, it's not that we don't support Sam. We're just trying to send a message to President Trump that he can't have DOJ cut 80,000 positions from the VA. So they willingly admitted that they were playing politics with his nomination. They weren't putting veterans first. They were playing politics. And Gallego in Arizona, he was just newly elected. Supposedly he's got higher ambitions, maybe presidential. I heard from some people that he was in New York City raising money, which I find is interesting with his background. But these guys are going to be held accountable, and Veteran Action will ensure that their voters understand what they did with Sam Brown.
Yeah, we have to continue to push that message out over and over. That's why I, for one, am glad that you set up this organization, Mark. So you have three main mission areas: the defense side, and the veterans, and then activists. So, what is your focus on the veterans piece of the mission of Veterans Action? I know that I think you were executive vice president for Concerned Veterans America, and did the Mission Act and the other bill that President Trump's first administration got through, which I, by the way, started going to the VA medical system after that bill was passed to see how it would work, and I'm still there. So thank you very much for that work that you did on that. But what are you focused on from Veterans Action?
You bet. So I took over Concerned Veterans for America after Pete Hegseth went to Fox News. And you're right, I was able to work with President Trump and members of Congress to pass two historic bills. The first was the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act. That bill would allow us to fire bad VA employees, but also to protect those whistleblowers who loved the mission of the VA of serving vets, who wanted to step forward and do the right thing. That was the first bill. And the second was the VA Mission Act, which would provide veterans like yourself choice in healthcare. And at Veteran Action, we believe that veterans deserve healthcare choice. If you're happy with the VA medical system, you should be able to stay. But if you're not able to be served well, you should be able to go across the street to another hospital that can fulfill your needs. And we're supporting the Veterans Access Act. So there's these arbitrary wait times and drive time criteria in order for you to see community care. So if you can't be seen within 20 days, or if you have over a 30-minute drive, you should be able to go to a private healthcare facility. But what we've seen with vets that have a mental health crisis, if they are contemplating suicide, they don't have days to wait. They may have hours. And we saw this play out in San Antonio at the Audie Murphy VA hospital, where a veteran was attempted to be seen. He just wanted to talk to somebody. Nobody wanted to talk to him. They just wanted to give him pills. And he shot himself in the head in front of that VA hospital. His dad, who's a doctor, solely blames the VA for his son's suicide. In fact, this Navy veteran, he actually wrote a book with his father about veteran suicide before he tragically took his own life. So that's why Veteran Action is encouraging all of our volunteers across America to contact your lawmakers, both your senators and your member of the House, and tell them to pass the Veteran Access Act.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Are you also working with any other groups on things like getting hyperbaric oxygen therapy approved for veterans treatment? I've worked that issue for several years through another organization that I was on the board for up until last year. And I know there's a bill in progress. Are you tracking on any of those kind of bills?
We're open to that. Right now, we've been focused on the Veteran Access Act and also growing the grassroots army. But no, we're listening to vets and different organizations all across the country, seeing what legislative priorities that we can put forward to help President Trump with his agenda for helping vets. I remember seeing President Trump in 2016. He campaigned all across the country on a 10-point plan to help our nation's veterans. So he takes this issue very seriously. And to talk about the grassroots, we have to build the Army. And that's one thing that we're so successful at doing at Concerned Veterans for America. I helped build the Article 3 Project Action Center with my good friend Mike Davis. We're both University of Iowa grads. We've known each other since college. We built this action center to help confirm President Trump's nominees. And you had mentioned the numbers before. We patched through tens of thousands of people in the Senate offices to help confirm people like Kash Patel and Pete Hegseth. And the conventional wisdom was in Washington that those nominees were dead on arrival. We changed the politics. And I'm bringing that same philosophy and technology to the Veteran Action Center. I want to connect people with their lawmakers to let them know that you have to prioritize vets. It's not good enough if you're a Republican, even if you're a veteran. You might even be my friend, and I've got friends in Congress. That's not good enough. You have to deliver on your campaign promises. You have to confirm these nominees. You have to pass the Veteran Access Act, and you have to be a champion. And we're going to hold your feet to the fire, and we're going to applaud the champions, and the people that don't vote the right way, we'll hold them accountable.
That's fantastic. Like I mentioned earlier, I fully support that effort. We've got to take our last break, Mark. When we come back, I'm going to show a little clip that you shared about a gentleman talking about actually reading the Constitution. I think that's a very appropriate discussion for two guys that have sworn to sign that blank check for their country under the oath to support and defend the Constitution. We'll be right back with Mark Lucas, founder of Veterans Action.
Anything else you got in there? Any like runes that you cast to make critical company decisions?
I keep a copy of the Constitution in my bag.
Okay. Tell me more.
It's the law, so it's a good reminder.
Don't break the law again. Don't break the law again. No, seriously, what is what, I mean, I understand it's the law, but
yeah.
Most people also don't want to inadvertently or purposefully break the law, but they don't carry a copy of the Constitution. Yeah. So what does that serve, in your life?
It's surprising. It takes like 2 hours to read it. Mm-hmm. It's a really short document, and it is surprising how often it ends up coming up in a discussion or a debate. Like one recently related to the election, somebody was saying the Electoral College is unconstitutional. I said, no, it's in the Constitution. It's Article 2, Section 1. They're like, no, it's not. It's like, I have a Constitution right here.
And they're like, okay, fine.
Yeah. It's literally in the Constitution. It's definitely constitutional. Like, okay, well, it shouldn't be constitutional. It's like, fair enough.
Yeah.
But like, it's definitely constitutional.
All right. How long have you had the Constitution in your bag?
Several years. Yeah.
Now, is it just for smacking down people who are speaking mistruths in debates, or
sometimes I reread it? It is a fascinating book, if you want to call it that, on organizational design. For all of its flaws, the United States is the longest standing republic in the world. And so when you think about that from a historic lens, a lot of the things that people who started the country did were very thoughtful and interesting. And so all these ideas around checks and balances, some of it relates to company building, and some of it can be used as an example of what is not relevant from company building. So for example, when you're building a country, you cannot make assumptions about the positive intent of the other people in the country. So you have to create structures to manage when there are bad actors. Mm-hmm. When you're in a company, you can just fire those people. It's super easy. And so you don't need to create those same mechanisms.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show, and we're talking on More War Monday about wars within our own borders. And that little clip there was very interesting because, you know, I carry my copy of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence myself, and my guest today is the guy that shared that clip on X, Mark Lucas, who's a former infantry officer of the Iowa National Guard, combat experience and Operation Enduring Freedom, founder of Veteran Action. Has worked at the highest levels on the Article 3 project, has led Concerned Veterans of America, and done all kinds of things for this country, including pushing legislation that's going to do nothing but help America's veterans and their families even more than what we already have. And we appreciate that, Mark. But, you know, I get my copy signed by people. Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, he gave me an oral quiz the first time I met with him on all the powers in Article 1, Section 8. So I made him sign it and everything. And I just met Mark Meckler of the Convention of States Project a few weeks ago and had him sign Article 5 for me. So, but the clip was very good. Thank you for sharing that. Who is that gentleman?
So Sam Korkos is a tech executive, and I've been a longtime fan of the Tim Ferriss podcast, the Tim Ferriss Show. Tim is an incredible business guy, great author, but I always respect the guests that he brings on. And this was, I believe, last summer. So it was before the election. And Sam is a very organized individual. And he was walking through the way he kind of plans things, how he runs his company. And then all of a sudden he said that he carries a copy of the Constitution in his backpack. And I was blown away. I was just very impressed and happy to hear that there are tech executives in this country who respect and love the Constitution. He talked about rereading it. And fast forward a few months later, I see Sam on Fox News as a member of DOJ talking about the IRS. And I was just so happy to see that the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, brought on Sam to help him. And now he is, I believe, the Chief Information Officer for Treasury. So it's nice to see that we have these people with incredible technology credentials who love the Constitution, respect our nation's founders, are helping reform the government. And I posted that clip and I made a joke that before Sam can go back to the private sector, we need him to make a pit stop at the Department of Defense because we've failed 7 consecutive audits. It'd be nice to have a guy like Sam who loves our Constitution, has great business sense to come in and help us pass an audit.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I'm glad you brought that up. That's where I was going to go next, you know, because part of the mission of Veteran Action on the defense side is to look to reduce the defense budget and eliminate the fraud, waste, and abuse that we all know is there. And look, I fully support the president in his push to increase that budget right now because we need to do some things that absolutely need to be done. But I also fully support the DOJ effort and everything. What are your thoughts, and how will the organization move going forward to try to support that line of your mission ops?
I think it's really important that our Defense Department leads the way on responsible spending. The Department of Defense, like I said, we've failed 7 consecutive audits. We've been engulfed in these forever wars, and the taxpayer has not received a good return on their investment. Look at the Afghanistan withdrawal, the botched withdrawal from President Biden. We lost both those forever wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Our Pentagon senior leaders, they're not being held accountable. And I'm all about having a strong national defense. I'll steal a phrase from former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. I'm a hawk, but I'm a cheap hawk. And I also support his statement where he said that we need to reduce the Pentagon to a triangle. If our national defense is going to be successful, we have to have, yes, the funds, but they have to be responsibly spent. And any of us who have spent time in the military or just the government in general understands there's a large amount of waste, fraud, and abuse. So I think we have a great opportunity to lead the way. But it's not just with the Pentagon, it's also with the VA. The VA's budget has doubled in the last 10 years. They have more staff, more buildings and facilities than they ever had, and yet the quality of care that our veterans receive at the VA has gone down. So you look at money, the spending, the buildings, the employees, more resources have not made our country safer on the defense side, and it hasn't provided better care for our veterans on the VA side.
Yeah, absolutely right. When we look at the accountability of the senior leadership in the Pentagon over the Biden years, and now that we've moved into a Trump administration, uh, going forward, what more would you like to see? I mean, I talked to folks that left the service over the COVID thing, one way or the other, either being forced out or left because they were being intimidated and coerced to get out and didn't want to get charged and those kind of things. I talked to folks that left because of the Afghanistan debacle. We know that, for instance, former Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Stu Scheller is a senior advisor and Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. So we're getting some good people in there that know what the accountability needs to look like going forward. From your perspective and from Veteran Action perspective and mission set, do you have any plans to do any work along those lines to help move that along? Because quite honestly, I don't talk to anybody that's satisfied with what we're seeing so far.
I absolutely agree with you. There needs to be more work done by the Department of Defense on reintegrating the people that were unjustly accused of breaking the law by not taking the COVID-19 vaccine. That was an unlawful mandate. We need to give those service members the honor and the respect that they deserve. We need to bring them back in if they want to be back in. We have to give them back pay. We need to completely apologize and rectify that situation. So that's one of our priorities. And then another one, it's a little bit of a personal grudge, but I think a lot of Americans share my sentiment, is that we need to court-martial Mark Milley. I'm very unhappy with the way that he conducted himself as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the botched Afghan withdrawal, him receiving that pardon from Joe Biden just shows that he probably committed some serious crimes. I believe that he needs to be court-martialed for him admitting that he was going to give China a heads up if there's going to be any military action. If we can't hold our senior leaders accountable at the head of the Defense Department, then what do the junior enlisted people have to believe? Do they think that the government's going to have their back? No, justice must be served. So we need to help the people that were targeted by not taking the COVID-19 vaccine, and we have to hold Mark Milley accountable.
I 100% agree with you, Mark. That's why I talked my wife into letting me throw my name in the hat to serve in the administration. If they need somebody to help hold those people accountable, I'm pretty good at holding people accountable, according to my military record, and you probably are too. Let's work together and make sure we can make that happen. Before I let you go, I got about a minute left. Tell folks where they can go find the organization and what actions that they can take right now, and how you get funded. I'm assuming through donations, those kind of things.
Well, sir, you have my full support in a job in administration. You'd be a great addition to the Defense Department. And if people want to learn more about Veteran Action, you can go to our website, veteranaction.org. You can click on the red Take Action button, and you can contact your lawmakers to support Matt Lohmeyer and Sam Brown to be confirmed in their positions. You can also follow us on X, Truth, Getter, at Veteran Action. And my personal handle, which I'm so thankful, sir, that you share a lot of my content, is at Lucas, Iowa. I still live in Iowa, hopefully never going back to the swamp. I like to be in real America with real Americans.
Absolutely, my friend. That's why I'm on the beach in Mississippi. I don't really want to go back there. And appreciate you being from Iowa too. Most people know my grandsons live there, and I get the opportunity to go visit, and they come visit me. So I appreciate what you all are doing, and we will and do fully support you, and we'll do even more as time goes on, my friend. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow, folks. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb, who's a helicopter pilot, but he's also a drone expert, and wrote his thesis on defense against drone attacks. And we're going to talk to him about that. And I'm sure we're going to talk about the continued insurrection in Los Angeles.